If that buyer is an end user, any time is a good time to buy.
Okay.
If you need it, buy it. Unlike our parents who bought for a lifetime, today's generation is not buying for a lifetime. When we gathered data from the ground, what we realized was there was unequal distribution. See, I'll take the example of Maharashtra and UP, two states where RERA has done a sterling job.
One of the things that I've also seen is this increased transparency that we've seen in this sector. Hello and welcome to Real Advice on Real Estate, a flagship podcast by Birla Estates. My name is Nikhil Taneja and this is where we will get real about the ups, downs, what's, whys and trends about real estate. Today's guest on the podcast is Jayshree Kurup. Jayshree is India's top editor in the real estate sector. She has over 20 years of experience reporting on real estate, construction infrastructure and architecture. She is part of the founding team of real estate publications like ET Realty and Times Property, having pioneered the coverage of real estate issues in national media. Having worked with government bodies, research institutions, and leading developers, she has a deep understanding of the industry's inner workings. Her expertise spans across topics such as urban development, housing policies, and consumer rights, making her an authoritative voice in the sector. Thank you so much for being on this show, Jayashree. It's, I think, an honor and privilege to have you here as someone who's been the domain expert in the industry of real estate. I think I cannot wait to hear all the wealth of knowledge I'm going to get just by sitting across you.
Thank you so much.
I have much to ask you, but we start with every guest with our first segment, which is called The First Thing. It's a way to just get to know you a little bit personally. Mm-hmm. So I'll have a few questions. If you can answer them quickly, then we'll move to the main section.
Yeah.
What's your first memory of growing up in your home?
I come from Kerala, and we had my nanny's house was about 350 years old, and it was a wooden house. There was no shosha about it, but there was something so definitely warm and welcoming about that home. And I think my mother recreated that in every house that we were in. So that to me is home. Comfort, tradition, and a wealth of emotions in the home.
350 years, has it been in your family for that long?
Yeah, it was in our family, but unfortunately, recently it was damaged in the floods. So,
I'm so sorry. Wow, but that's incredible. What was your first realization of why homes are important?
I think I was a very shy child. I mean, it's difficult to imagine that now, but I was a very shy child and I hated talking to a lot of people. But when I came back home, it was as though there was a warmth enveloping me. And for me, that is what home is all about. Where it's a safe space, it's somewhere where you know that the people in the home don't judge you. Yeah. And I think and it has to be warm colors, it has to be well lit, it has to be well ventilated. And all these things matter to make a house a home for you.
Yeah. Which part of the country was this?
This was in Delhi. I was born and brought up in Delhi.
Okay. And where in Delhi, just if I may ask?
I grew up in Kidwai Nagar, then in RK-Puram. My father was in the government service. Okay. And then we moved to Sheikh Sarai. Then I lived in Janakpuri when I got married. And now I live in Gurgaon.
So you have toured the entire NCR region.
Yes.
Wow, wonderful. And the good thing is, I mean, homes there are much more spacious than the homes in Mumbai. Yes. So I can imagine you would have grown up with a lot more natural light than we do.
Absolutely.
So having worked in this sector for so long, do you remember the first home you fell in love with?
Our house in Gurgaon, actually. My husband and I kept going from house to house. We may have seen 30, 40 houses and not liked it. What he liked, I didn't. What I liked, he didn't. Then we went and saw one house, which we looked at and said, bingo, this is it. There was so much light. It was so airy. It was very, very well ventilated. And somehow the vibes of the house was very good. I truly believe that when you walk into the house that you should live in, it resonates with you. There's a vibe that you pick up. And that's what makes a good house.
Which part of Gurgaon was this?
This is South City 1.
Okay. My next question was going to be, which is the first home you bought? You've already answered that. But is there a reason you decided to buy a home at that time?
Well, we stayed in a place which was rapidly getting overcrowded. We were taking more and more time to reach. And parts of our family had moved. My sister-in-law had moved. And friends and family were moving to Gurgaon. It was a good time. It was way back in 2001. And private development had just started.
Yeah.
So it was a good time to buy, and home loan were easily available then.
No, I can imagine now the rate of that property would be really great.
Many times over.
The first time that you felt that real estate can be a career?
It was not intentional. It was, I used to look after a page in ET called the People's Page. And it was 1990s. So the economy had opened up. There was so much happening in the country. So at that time, after that, I had taken a month's break. And when I came back, I asked my editor, give me another beat. So he said, there's one beat that's languishing, which is property. Property was not really a beat that time. I mean, it was a part of infrastructure kind of thing. So then he said, but it's languishing. Would you like to take that as a challenge? And I started it, and I'm so happy where it took me, because after that, the first housing and habitat policy came, the NAREDCO was formed, CREDAI was formed. But once I got hooked onto it, I realized how much depth that can have. And it was just forming. It was a sunrise industry. And somehow it just had its own charm for me.
I love how you have called it the sunrise industry. I see that the sun is shining continuously since then.
Yeah.
I also want to ask, what's a time, or let's say, what's the first time that you felt proud of working in the real estate sector?
We started a channel called Magic Bricks Now, which was part of the Times television network. And there was one show called the Property Hotline, where I was the expert who used to answer queries that came from around the country. And people used to ask, and I never told them which property to buy, but I would tell them how to buy a property. What should you think of? What should you look for? What are the elements you should look for? And I had gone to Hyderabad on one work, and we were at the Times guest house. And suddenly one guy came up to me and said, "You are Jayshree, ma'am." So I said, "Rani, what?" So he said, "I asked you a question on Property Hotline. Using your advice, I bought a house. I'm so happy that I'm staying there." That really made me feel very, very nice.
That's so lovely. And I can imagine the first time feels so special, but there must have been so many more times since. Now you've been answering the questions of so many other folks. It's my time to ask you a few of these questions for our audiences. Before I get into the main conversation, this is a question that I ask everyone who's a guest on this podcast. How would you describe what you do, the incredibly nuanced work that you do? How would you describe that in the simplest way, imagine to a 12-year-old?
I use data to gather insights about the property market and help people use that data so that people can buy houses, governments can build the right kind of cities, and governments can, national and state governments can create the right policies.
I love that. It's so incredibly precise and clear. So let me now ask you, because we've obviously been, you've had such an illustrious career, it's been 2 decades. What do you think is the most transformative thing that you've seen in the real estate market over the last 2 decades?
Policies, I would say. Not only housing policies. The first housing and habitat policy came in 1998. It was redone in 2005. We've had tweaks to it. We've had Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. But I think actually policies across the board. When the Mumbai floods happened and the JNNURM was launched to kind of repair our cities, urban renewal mission, I think that was one great step forward where you acknowledge that water, power, drainage, sewerage, everything matters when you buy a house. And I think even when the National Housing Bank was formed to actually give credible housing finance to individuals, that was the beginning of an industry that has scale. Today is going to be a very large part of our GDP.
Yeah.
So I think the right policies at the right time was the best part of this industry.
Yeah. And this is, of course, from a policy space, but anything else that you see as almost like a significant transformation in the way that the industry runs?
Let me say that when I started writing, luxury was only about space and maybe location. And even locations were, just evolving. But today, luxury is about so much, when it's luxury, for every category, the premiumness of the location, the specifications of the property, all this matters so much that I think that developers themselves have actually understood the consumers and started building for them. I think that's a big step forward.
No, I absolutely agree. And one of the things that I've also seen, and I think something that most of our guests have spoken of, is this increased transparency that we've seen in this sector. Do you agree do you think that this sector has become more transparent? And secondly, what do you think should be done to get more consumer trust even at this point?
I think the industry needs to understand that without trust, this industry will not scale the heights. And the lack of trust came because of a certain period of time. And, many things happened. The NBFC's crisis happened. There was, they were over-leveraged. There were not enough rules to, you could take money from me and buy land. It was legal. They were not doing anything wrong. They were within the purview of the law. But somewhere, it was a nascent industry which was only just maturing. Yeah. I think today we are fairly mature. A lot of, fly-by-night operators have been weeded out. We have very serious players in the market. And I think today and RERA has been a big factor.
Absolutely.
So I think we are on the right track.
Will you tell me a little bit more about that? What do you think still needs to be done? Let's just break it down to two things. What is that one thing that you feel has made the industry more transparent, and one thing that you think can still be done in this regard? You've clearly seen the best and worst of the real estate market over 2 decades. Jayashree, I'm wondering, what is it that you feel needs to change? What is that one thing that you feel is still not being done right? And then if that changes, it can genuinely benefit the consumers?
Study of the carrying capacity of locations and cities. If one, and actually it needs to happen at the city level. It happens in many parts of the world. Once I was in the US and I asked one of the city governments in the Silicon Valley, I said, how do you manage to manage the entire city well? Because there is an influx of people. So they said that Cisco was a very large commercial occupant. When they asked for a 15th or 16th tower, they didn't give it to them immediately. They said, let us augment our services so that one tower means so many vehicles, so much extra footfall. Now here, I've asked city after city. I have yet to get an answer from any city. I think somewhere our system does not compute what is the carrying capacity of every location. If one developer launches premium, the second, third, fifth, sixth, 20th launch, by the first and second do exceptionally well, but by the 20th, Absolutely. It is an oversupply. And that oversupply can be avoided. And I think then everybody will do well. The developer will do well, the city will do well, the locality will do well, and the buyers will do well. Yeah. When the 20th project tanks in that locality gets a bad name and real estate gets a bad name. I think somewhere we need to get our metrics right.
Yeah. And don't be a sheep, be original in this state. And at the same time, I'm supposing also have something unique in your building that actually creates value for the consumer. Sure. I'm also wondering if there's a practice that you think that the real estate sector does that you feel that needs to change.
The ratio of investors to end users. Okay. I think we have come a long way from the 2006, 2007 kind of sales. But I think if you only look after investor interest, somewhere the project itself will have black windows and things like that. There is a lot more that's happening in the industry, but I still think it all goes back to assessing demand. What is the demand? What is the carrying capacity of that locality? And how many people do you think that locality can hold in that category?
Yeah.
So, when we did the I did the baseline survey of 35 cities for the National Housing Bank when they were creating the Residex. No two cities are the same. No two cities can be managed on the same parameters. But when you actually assess the cities, you can. We were told we gathered data for them from the ground for 5 years on a quarterly basis. But what we realized was they asked us for premium, middle income, lower income, and EWS categories of housing, right? When we gathered data from the ground, what we realized was there was unequal distribution. And even if you take divide it into categories, we were struggling to find some localities had only premium and some localities had only lower income housing. So, we've ghettoized our cities to such an extent that it is not an equitable distribution of housing. That we need to take care of. Then all categories do well.
I mean, so well said. I completely agree. I think there is so much nuance in these conversations that most people don't understand. And even when I speak about the buyer of homes, you've obviously seen how the Indian and international markets have evolved. But there is so much complexity when it comes to real estate, especially for a new buyer. How do you kind of go about this in a way where you feel confident about the whole process? What would you advise for a new buyer? How can they navigate the complexities of this market in a simple manner?
If that buyer is an end user, any time is a good time to buy.
Okay.
If you need it, buy it. If others tell you that this is not the right time of the market, there's no timing of a market for end use. It's like a consumer buy, right? Do your study, do your research, figure out which part of the city you would like to live in terms of distance from work, schools, colleges, entertainment facilities, retail facilities, whatever your lifestyle demands, is it there in the radius that you would be comfortable traveling to? Once you shortlist that, then shortlist the developers who are building in the category. When you're buying a house, it's always good to stretch yourself a little, because remember, your salary also goes up every year. What is unaffordable today, by next year will be a little more affordable, and by the 5th year, it will be significantly affordable. So there's no harm in stretching yourself a little bit in the beginning. Also think of the neighborhood. Is the neighborhood the kind of people that you would like your children to interact with, your parents to interact with, and so on? It's good to figure out what that neighborhood is like. And also facilities. Today you only drive, but as you grow older, you may think of, maybe taking a metro for this thing. You don't want to take out your car. And is it well serviced? Even people who are coming to service you, is it easy to access? Ease of access is a very big thing. And especially after COVID, it's important to have health facilities in your vicinity.
Yeah. So well said. I feel like I don't need to do more of this podcast. I've gotten all the answers that I need. It's such a step-by-step guide to being confident in the home buying process. But so much to learn from that. I think one of the things that you've said that has been echoed across everybody else in the podcast also is the fact that there's no wrong time to buy your home. If you want to buy it, if you need it, if your instinct tells you that this is important, go for it. And I feel that's the confidence that I think most homeowners need. I also want to know, Jayashree, because there is very little education about this sector out there in the public. Of course, there are resources, but not everybody knows where to find them. So, I mean, as an example, Birla Estates, of course, has started the Real Advice campaign to empower home buyers. I want to ask you, do you feel that the homeowners today are more aware, they're more educated? Do you feel like there should be more education in this sector? And if so, where can they really go looking for resources?
The home buyer still doesn't have resources. If you ask me, when I started Magic Bricks research, there was not much resources for the home buyer. Even today, I believe that it is an underserviced category. Okay. I think the more we talk and we bring the experts in, that would fill the gap. At one point, I think it was 2015, I wrote a book called How to Buy a House. We sold 7,000 copies in 3 months, 4 months. But that was because there was nothing else. There was no reference point. Today, more people are writing about it, which is really good. And we didn't go into reprints because the policies were changing.
Yeah.
But I think there is space for more and more research, more and more data to be put in the consumer space.
I mean, absolutely. I'm also wondering, what do you think? Do you think it is important for people to educate themselves? How important is it really? Because, of course, there are experts and there are so many people who would be able to give you that guidance. But how important is it for anybody who's about to purchase a home to arm themselves with knowledge themselves?
I think a lot of people have realized that you have to do your homework yourselves. As far as they can, many people do that research. There are some who follow, it's like a sheep tendency. If my neighbor's uncle bought it, so I'll also buy it kind of thing. But I keep telling people, again, think of how you will, you're not buying a house for 1 year or 2 years. Let's say 5 years, 10 years. In 5 years, will you be happy staying here? In 10 years, will you be happy staying here? As you grow older, as your children age, would you like to continue staying here? Think of that today and then buy, because it is a long-term investment and you're paying for 10, 15 years, right?
No, absolutely. And, something that's coming to my mind after you've spoken about the future and stretching yourself. There's a conversation that Rajkumar Rao has had recently where he spoke about the fact that when he was about to buy his first home in Bombay, Shah Rukh Khan advised him that buy outside of your capability or capacity and try to reach there, because, so well said, right? It is something that you are buying for a long term. You're buying for something that's not just going to be for the next 4 or 5 years. So find a home that for the next 20 years you would like to live in, or 25 or 30 years at that.
And you're buying for tomorrow at today's prices.
Correct.
So you can stretch.
Absolutely. And hopefully everybody, as the economy continues doing well, everybody also keeps earning more. So they're able to meet that. The other thing I also want to talk to you, Jayashree, is about infrastructure, right? That plays such a key role in property value. How would you advise first-time buyers to evaluate the future potential of a location based on infrastructure?
I remember telling a lot of people, look for the transit links, look for metros, for suburban rails and things like that. These matter. Even the arterial roads that lead between, say, Bangalore and Hyderabad, Mumbai and Pune, that kind of thing, because those add value. You can see that as infrastructure happens, as the Chevry link came, various things happen, the markets suddenly pick up. So don't only buy because there is an infrastructure announced. Remember that infrastructure will take 5 to 7 years before it takes place. So buy where there is today's potential, which will be enhanced tomorrow if the infrastructure comes.
This happened in the case of my parents. They bought a home in Bombay, and at a place where it was said that there's going to be a new bridge that would be created between the locality as well as the highway. And it's been 20 years, there's been no bridge.
But there are other things. Our cities are so fluid that if one doesn't come, you figure out how to live in that existing.
No, absolutely. I think, there's better development that keeps happening all around you. But you're so right. I still want to ask a little bit further on this question, because it's so difficult to evaluate the future potential of a property, right? How do you figure out that this location is going to be right for me? You mentioned in the past about accessibility and a few other things, but for anybody who's a first-time home owner or home buyer, any other advice that you would give them in that will help them in evaluating that potential?
See, anything that is in the radius of a commercial development or commercial complexes or commercial districts always does well. Now, if you are going to buy only timed on where you're working today, let's assume I am very familiar with Delhi and Gurgaon and so on. So let me take that example. Suppose I bought it in Gurgaon near Cyber City. Then I know that there's 12 million square feet of space. Absolutely. And there is that's where I'm working today. It's very convenient. Next, I move to Noida, which is a good 45, 50 kilometers away. Will this property be a millstone round my neck? What happens is a lot of people have started saying, let me buy for today. And suppose I can't manage, people don't mind selling and moving on to the next place that is. Correct. Unlike our parents who bought for a lifetime, today's generation is not buying for a lifetime. Buy for as long as it is comfortable for you. And when you don't need it, the markets are vibrant enough for you to exit this and buy somewhere else. And I think some more policy changes need to be done. As I said, we are only maturing as a real estate market, and policies will also come through.
Yeah. If you had to pinpoint one thing that you feel is holding back the real estate market in India and the growth of this market in India, what would that be?
The price of land. In India, the cost of land is roughly 60 to 90% of the cost of our property. That is way too high. And you will never be able to cool the prices of property and bring it to affordable levels unless the price of land is reduced. And for that, there has to be a system of land records, which we are very, very poor in. 15 years down the line, since we announced digitization of land records, it is still a work in very slow, tardy progress. This is an issue that I'm working with a lot of experts on. And I think if you can cool the price of land and take away black money from the price of land, it helps everybody in the industry and it helps everybody in the country. But it's so deeply ingrained, that because of high prices, because of policies and so on, you need to clean up the land market if the real estate market has to take off.
No, I think you have really found the core issue that can really help us grow further if you're able to find a way of subsidizing it or just making it more accessible. You worked with so many government and private stakeholders in the real estate market. How do you see future policies evolving in a way that real estate becomes more accessible and safer for homeowners?
That you have to declare carpet area. You have to say what constitutes super area. These were all big issues a few years ago. It's also said that structural integrity is important. It also says that there's a timeline of development. Quarterly, the developers have to post it on the websites. So these are all good steps to go forward. Even in terms of lending, commercial lending, a lot has happened. But I think somewhere there is a mismatch between long-term capital and short-term capital in the real estate market. A lot of the NBFC crisis was a clear. One or two companies did something wrong, but everybody did not need to be penalized for it. But it was a knee-jerk reaction to a big fraud, right? In the process, what we did was we killed the real estate market for many years, and that led to so many consumers not getting their houses. Not every developer was badly intentioned. It was just that funds dried up, right? And Swami was created to just finish those projects. And Swami, the way it went about it showed that if the intent is to complete, you can complete. And funds they can make money out of it, right? Steady income, but you can make money. So I think we need to get our finance piece right.
So in terms of policy, Jayashree, what would you still advise? What is let's say one policy that you think that can genuinely make real estate sector a little bit more accessible to the consumer?
Lower the risk of development. Today, financial institutions load so much risk at the behest of the RBI that funds become extremely expensive. Right? And the second thing I think is that these projects should be bankable projects. If projects are bankable, it automatically de-risks the industry. And these are two things I think policy still needs to get its piece.
No, absolutely. I wanted to also talk about trends. What are the most significant trends that you're already seeing in the real estate sector? And basis your domain expertise, what do you see happening in the next 5 to 10 years in this sector that is going to be a trend?
Every few years, real estate markets will go through that cycle around the world. It's not only India, around the world. 5 to 7 years is the normal thing. At one time, we could see that it was following that pattern, 7 to 15% rise in different localities. And then it tanks for some time, and then it, again regenerates. What happens is that as the industry becomes, the markets become buoyant, the prices go up, the end users get left out of that buying cycle, more investors come in, the market tanks, then it corrects itself and it goes on. And there's nothing wrong in that. But I think again, I'll come back to that point I made in the beginning, that the cities must assess the carrying capacity of their land. When they don't do that, then the quality of life, no matter how good it is within the complex, if you step out into chaos, then the quality of that property automatically erodes. It is in the purview of the city to make sure that they work with the developers and give them enough sanctions for that carrying capacity to be used.
No, absolutely. And, I think there is so much of a misunderstanding or lack of understanding about this sector, particularly, as you said, even in the way that people see it today, they see it previously, see it tomorrow. Given the fact that, these cycles repeat themselves, so sometimes you feel confident, at the same time, they might be, there's no right time for you to even know, is this the time for me to buy? Do you see any trends that, make people feel a little bit more optimistic about where the real estate market is going? Anything that you feel that just gives a little bit more confidence to the homeowner, home buyer today?
Earlier, developers used to go and build in the boondocks because that's where land was available.
Correct.
Today, some cities are going in for redevelopment. Some cities have, some developers have already created land banks, and those localities have now become lived in. So as a result, what they're doing is, they're not building extreme peripheral homes. Yeah. There is a lot of suburban development, and facilities have come to the suburbs, whether it's metros or suburban rings or whatever. So cities have integrated their suburbs into themselves. So I don't think the fear of locality tanking is so great. In fact, if you buy today, in 5 years, all the facilities would have reached there, so that the value of your property significantly enhances. If it doesn't, you've either bought from a bad developer who has not followed the rules, or you've just been taken and you didn't do your research well enough.
No, this is, I think, this feels very bullish, especially because of the fact that most folks are looking at newer areas to invest in. And we see the rise of the newer areas, and we've discussed that in other episodes also. I have two last questions for you. One, of course, you've been instrumental in demystifying a lot of real estate jargon. Everything seems a lot more complex than it is. Do you have like 3 or 4 terms that are commonly misunderstood that you'd like to just break down, saying here's the 3-4 things that you keep hearing, but here's what they actually mean?
You've heard location.
Correct.
Everybody tells you that.
We've heard that many times on this podcast.
What the hell does it mean? My location is not your location, and your location is not somebody else's location. I think what you need to demystify is, what does that location mean for you? Is it convenient for you? Will it be convenient for you in the future? Will there be enough facilities? Is this your lifestyle? I mean, sometimes you pay through your nose for magnificent glittering clubhouses, and you work 18 hours a day. You don't even have time to even enter that clubhouse to see what it looks like. Pay for those things that matter to you, not for those things that glitters when you talk about it.
That's great. Any other couple of points that you feel like, just words that you keep, jargon that you hear that you would like to demystify?
Connectivity. Everybody says connectivity. You could be on a well-connected expressway, but if you're on the wrong side of the expressway and all the development is happening on the other side, you have to take a call whether going through a crowded U-turn would take away the price of your property. This I first saw, when I was in Insignia. I used to handle the Asia-Pac markets very early, 2001 to 2005. So there in Thailand, it was a newly evolving market. The Southeast Asia crash had just finished. There was one building that was significantly well located, but nobody would occupy it. And then they figured that there was a crowded red light. And you spent so much time there that nobody wanted to take that property. What they did was they created a U-turn. Wow. The minute they created a U-turn, that building filled up in months. So you see, when you say connectivity also means your connectivity. Yeah. Not just a road going there, but how easy it is to come to your house. Similarly, in terms of facilities, like I said, go for those facilities that you will use not only today, but 5 years down the line. If your children are babies, you need a safe environment.
Absolutely.
As they grow up, you need some place which is close to entertainment hubs where there is retail, where children can hang out and so on. And then as you grow older, it should also be safe. You should have good sidewalks and things like that.
Yeah.
So anything that in the long term means safety and security, that is a very, very big thing, especially in today's world.
Yeah, like for me, I mean, after hearing you, I think one of the key things that's become so important to me as I've grown older is public spaces, parks and recreational spaces, which I find are really lacking in, urban areas, especially like Mumbai, which doesn't have as many as possible. And now, even though I'm living in a place for the last few years, my next goal is to find a place which would have at least some greenery around. And again, you don't think of those things as essential to you today because you're working a certain number of hours. But as you start growing older, you're just like, hey, I want to go for a walk, but there's no place nearby. So you're so right,
citizens can do a lot. And this is something that I'm championing big time. I think citizen-city partnerships. You will know that there's no place for you to walk.
Correct.
The city does not really know whether there is any place in your neighborhood to walk. If you work with your councillors, if you work with your local representatives, and if you work with cities, I find that cities are very open to working with you. Because you see, if there is a waterlogging problem,
correct,
you know it, the city doesn't care, it hasn't noted it. But if you go with your we created a waterlogging atlas of Gurgaon. A lot of RWAs did that. And the minute we did that, we found that the city, out of some 197, they fixed about 110 spots by creating small drops of water, the water where it was collecting, drop it into the main master drain and things like that. And a lot happened. Of course, this year we've had way too much water. Peak flow has been very high. So we've had a lot of waterlogging in Gurgaon. And of course, there are small problems like not doing desilting on time, which all our cities are, they don't do the desilting on time before the monsoons. Yeah. But I think if you as citizens can push the cities, push your councillors that I do need this desilting now, raise your voices, make it as loud as you can. At least in your locality, you will have a nicer place. And if I can continue for a minute.
Please.
I once went for the, in Singapore, there is a smart homes conference, smart cities conference that happens. So I was a delegate once. And I remember the mayor of Copenhagen, I interviewed her, and European cities are very well run. They're old cities, but there's a lot of modernization that has happened. But she said, if you know how much I think about how to open public spaces so that you can relieve urban stress, that is what keeps her busy. Every mayor, every councillor, and every citizen should be thinking of how we can open places, public spaces. And it's not difficult. Yeah. There is plenty of space that you can create, green spaces, good sidewalks and things like that. We are we are so accepting of poor quality living. As citizens, we need to demand more.
That's a really passionate, really passionate statement. And I completely am with you, right? I think everybody needs to do a little bit more, and we cannot just depend upon and hope that the policies change on their own. We have to fight for them. So well spoken, Jayshree. You mentioned smart homes. That was actually going to be a question that I was going to ask next. What is your opinion on smart homes? Do you think that they are going to help this sector evolve? Are there an imminent advantage to the homeowner, home buyer, as in the near future?
You see, technology has evolved so much. If 20 years ago somebody told me that I would carry my life's information on a little hand device, I would have laughed at them, right? I remember that, I'm in my 60s and I first touched a computer in 1992 when I moved to Saturday Times. So I think that we are a generation that did not have access to computers, but very quickly evolved. And we are still evolving, right? But there's a generation which grew up with technology. For them, technology is something that is very acceptable, which is part of life. There's nothing force-fitted into their lives. I think the first use of technology was for safety and security. Multiple levels of safety at your house, at your block, at your gates, and so on. It was a safety and security. Today, your couch potatoes don't want to get up, use a remote, raise your blinds, lower your blinds, put on the TV, put on your AC before you come home. This is all part of smart homes. And why not? If the technology is available, why should I not want all these? And I think that's the next big thing that is happening. Today, luxury means smartness. Luxury means ease of use. Luxury means taking a good lifestyle for granted.
Yeah. I love that. Taking a good lifestyle for granted. That's not a way that we usually see it. But I think important caveat that make sure you exercise while being a couch potato who takes all the advantage of this. My final question is something that I ask everybody on the podcast. What's a real advice that you would give to a first-time homeowner or home buyer that will make them feel more confident about going about this process?
You can do it. Everybody can do it. There is a house out there for each one of us. It may be, you may have a small budget, you may have a specific requirement, you may have a locality you want to buy in. Keep looking, you will find the right house for yourself. But do your research. Ask your questions. There are many, many places like yours where answers are offered. And you should not take any broker at face value or any advisor at face value. I think you should do your own research yourself because you know best what you need.
So rightly said. And again, it does give people the confidence. It gave me the confidence when you said you can do it. I felt like even I can do it possibly. We're going to end with our rapid fire segment, because this is a podcast and you want to do that. You have so much information and knowledge at your disposal. We'd love to hear you break down some of our complicated questions or complicated things in just simple ways. This segment is called 4-3-2-1 Real Advice. We're going to ask you 4 questions, and then if you can give quick answers to them, hopefully it'll be helpful to everyone watching. 4 tips that you would give to a first-time homeowner.
Figure out what your budget is. Figure out the location you want to stay in. Figure out the quality of the neighborhood and access to facilities.
That's really, I think it encompasses everything. Thank you. 3 myths that everyone has about the real estate sector that you would like to break.
That it is unsafe to buy a house. That it is impossible to buy your house. That it is, they could do it because they have black money. I don't think so. In today's world, you can be a professional with only a check payment and you can buy whatever house you want.
Thank you. That's actually, again, gives so much confidence on hearing that. 2 things, Jayashree, you know about real estate that you feel others do not.
That it's a cyclical business. It will never keep going up. It will come down, but what comes down goes up again. And the second thing I would say is that not everybody is out to get you. There have been instances where people have had different difficult times, but I think there are very, very good industry players today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And finally, what's one real advice that you've gotten that you'd like to give us?
Do your research yourself.
Okay.
And go after it. It's not easy to find the data that you're looking for, but it's there somewhere. Keep looking and keep asking the questions. And don't be scared to ask the questions. I mean, it may sound foolish to somebody. So what? If they may laugh at you, it's perfectly all right. It's your money.
I mean, again, I don't know. I keep saying so well said because everything that you're saying is actually really well said. But yeah, it's really insightful. I've learned so much. I think you spoke about people going about their research. I feel like this podcast is a place that they can learn a lot more. At the same time, I think they should just go through all the reportage you have done and all the efforts that you put in demystifying real estate for so many people. Thank you so much for doing that again today for us, Jayashree.
So, Nikhil, I'd also like to tell you that all these years I wrote about real estate and the city was a subsidiary. But what I've realized is that the real estate market has more or less fixed itself. The problems are more or less fixed itself. There are some that is a work in progress. But the city is a problem that we have not fixed. And right now, all my engagement is towards giving people the confidence that you should be able to correct not only the real estate that you stay in, but the locality and the city that you stay in.
Yeah.
So I've started something called Urban Insights. And Urban Insights is all about water power, drainage, sewerage, and so on. Things that matter to you and which add to the value of your property. So I would like to say that, when you buy a house, also think of all this and be active participants in this.
I think that could be very well the subject of our next podcast. We've already spoken so much about real estate. We'll be talking about the city, real advice to real insight. But again, thank you so much for the work that you do, Jayashree. I think it is so important that there are people like you who are helping us helping us and navigate complicated scenarios, complex things, at the same time also helping guide us towards getting the confidence to buy our own property. Thank you so much for all that work. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap on yet another episode. I always keep saying I've learned something new from these podcasts, but I do feel like a domain expert at this point. If you are hungry for more too, we have got you covered. Head over to billaestates.com/real advice. It's packed with everything you need to know about real estate. Blogs, a chatbot to answer your burning questions, and so much more. Keep an ear out for our upcoming podcast too. We've got some exciting episodes in the pipeline. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Nikhil Taneja signing off. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of real estate.